look at this that I found. I was rooting through some old gear drawers the other day and came across this little bad boy. This is the Flip Mino HD, and it is pretty much my first video camera, camcorder if you like, and I thought it would be fun to bring it out and test it against my Sony A7C that I used to make all of my YouTube videos. So I know what you're thinking, A7C, this, completely different leagues, yes, but I thought it'd be fun to see what it can do. I used to love this thing, I've not used it in years. Let's start by just looking at the specs for the little Flip Mino HD camcorder, and it's fair to say the specs seem pretty ancient now. It was released back in 2008, which is mad to say was nearly 15 years ago. Can you believe that? It records 720p HD video at 30 frames a second, so even though it says HD on the front of it, it's not full 1080p HD, it's 720 HD. The lens on the back, I'm not sure how wide it is, but it's not very wide at all, and it's got a 1/4 inch sensor inside, which according to the spec sheet that I have here says it's pretty good in low light. I'm not so sure. So I'm filming on the Flip HD and I'm just testing low light performance because apparently it's not too bad in low light. This is fairly low light. What does it look like? It's got a massive 4 GB of internal memory, which is enough for about an hour's worth of 720p video, but it's not expandable. You have no slot for an SD card or anything like that. It's literally limited to 4 gig. It's got a 1.5 inch display on the front, which does its job. It's a display, it's not the best, but it's there. It allows you to see what you're filming. But my favourite thing of all is this, and this is why it's called a flip camera. It's got a flip up USB stick, so you can charge it and import all your footage through the USB stick that is built in. I think that's pretty clever. So you can't change any of the settings on this little Flip Mino HD. You are literally stuck with whatever it gives you straight out of the box, which is 720p, 30 frames a second. But what this was designed for back in the day, back in 2008, was it was just designed to carry around with you in your pocket and capture memories, like little family trips away, family days out, holidays, things like that you could just look back on in a few years' time. And 720p back in 2008 was okay for that. It's a camcorder at the end of the day. It's not designed for filmmaking like the Sony A7C is, with it being an entry-level full-frame camera that can be used for filmmaking. This is completely the opposite. The Sony A7C is obviously worlds away from this little thing. It shoots 4K 30 frames a second, you can do 1080p 120 frames a second for slow motion, you've got picture profiles, you can shoot in log, interchangeable lenses, and it's designed to be a camera that you can create with. It's designed for beginner filmmakers really. And that is exactly what this wasn't designed for. Okay, so this is a bit of a vlogging test with the Flip Mino HD. I don't know what the focal length of this lens is, but it's not very wide at all. You can see it's very tight into my face, so that means it's not really very vloggable. It's not a very nice angle to vlog with. No one wants to see anyone's face this close up. Whereas if you compare that to the Sony A7C, you can see that we have a much wider field of view. I've got a nice wide lens on with the Tamron 17 to 28. I can hold it at full arm's length and I can see even more, absolutely everything behind me, but I can just hold it more comfortably as well. This is a nice comfortable length away from my body, and I'm still getting a nice wide field of view to be able to vlog with. Or if you wanted, because it is an interchangeable lens camera, you can stick on a nice prime lens to get some really crisp footage, or a nice telephoto lens and just change it up a little. So many more options with the A7C. Obviously, it's designed for that. And just going back to the Flip Mino HD as well, you can really see how tight in on the face it is now, but there's no depth of field. It just all looks, I'm not going to say sharp because it's 720p, but it's all in focus. There's no depth, whereas nice shallow lens, you get lots of depth of field. So as I was charging this back up and turning it back on for the first time in God knows how many years, it went back through the setup menu, so I was putting in the date and time and all of that stuff. And what's funny is it wouldn't go as far forward as today's date. It wouldn't go any further than 2020. But I think flip cameras have gone bust now, so maybe they were just a bit ahead of their time and realised they weren't going to make it to 2020, so they didn't bother putting that amount of dates in the camera. I love looking back at old gear though and realising just how far technology has come in a relatively short amount of time, because this is only 15 years ago, which isn't really that long ago. But if you go back 15 years ago, 4K cameras like the Sony A7C would have cost so much money. They would have been practically unaffordable to the vast majority of people. And now pretty much every camera that is released is capable of easily shooting 4K video. Things move on so quickly, and there's technology filtering down from all these more expensive pieces of gear into the more affordable pieces all of the time. It's going to be crazy to think where we're going to be in another 15 years on top of this. As I mentioned before, the image quality of the Flip Mino HD is 720p, which is nowhere near what we're used to seeing from cameras now. Even with 1080, 4K, now 5K, 8K, 12K, whatever's coming in the future and is available now, this is a long way behind. And you can't even change the frame rate, it's stuck at 30 frames a second. But for what this camera was designed for and the time it was released, this would have been ideal. It was designed to just put in your pocket and capture those memories while you are on a family holiday or a family day out, so you have something to look back on in a few years' time. It is very limiting, but obviously you're not going to be editing it in the same way that we edit videos now for YouTube. I would never use this camera, even back in the day, for YouTube, because for stuff like that there would have been better options, even though back in 2008 YouTube wasn't what it is now. But to make this sort of video, I would have never used a camera like this, even back then. Now the A7C, as we've already mentioned, is completely different to that. You got 4K video, slow motion, interchangeable lenses, picture profiles, everything you need to be a filmmaker and learn filmmaking. And if you want to see more videos on the Sony A7C, I'll link up to a little playlist I've made just up there. How does this walk-in shot look? I've got the Sony A7C and the Flip Mino HD. I reckon I'm not even in shot in the Flip Mino. With the A7C you can see everything around me. Yeah. So the microphone on the Flip Mino HD is built in, but I don't think it's actually that bad for a built-in microphone, to be honest. It does what it's designed for. It captures ambient audio, so you can just hit record and capture your memory. It's not going to be the same as using an external mic on something like this, but it does the job. And now, just so you can clearly hear the difference, you are now hearing the sound from the Rode VideoMic Pro Plus on top of the Sony A7C. And the bonus that this has as well is it has a bit of a windshield, which is this fluffy dead cat thing on top, and that just means any wind noise, it's not that windy today, but you might get a little bit of breezy wind noise through a built-in microphone like this, whereas the Rode VideoMic Pro Plus is gonna limit that quite a lot. One last thing I have noticed with this is because the lens is so tight on the back of this, even when you're full arm's length away, it's really zoomed in on your face, and because the screen is on the opposite side and you can't see what you're framing up, if you are trying to vlog with it, it's really hard to frame your shot. You don't know if you're in the shot, as we just noticed with the shot I filmed there talking about the microphone. I cut half of my face off. It's not the easiest to use. It's designed really to just point at someone else and then view through the screen what you're doing. It's not great for vlogging with. Not really designed for that though either. It couldn't be any easier to use the Flip Mino HD. You literally press the power button on the side and it bleeps, and then you click the red button in the middle and it's recording, and you can record whatever you want. You can talk to it like that. As we mentioned, it's very tight on your face, but you can record whatever you want. hit stop with the same button, and that is it. You can then watch it back on the camera like that. And then to import all of the footage, all you have to do is flip up the little USB stick and pop that straight into your computer. The simplicity of it is what makes this so good, or it did back in the day, because you don't really see stuff like this anymore. I think the reason we don't see stuff like this anymore is our phones have replaced it. Phone cameras are way better than this now. The A7C is a little bit more complicated to get a good quality image from. To use a camera like the Sony A7C and get the best from it, you're going to need to know a little bit about how cameras work and how to get a good quality image, such as the best settings to use in certain situations, the 180-degree rule, what lens to use in certain situations, apertures, ISO, shutter speeds, white balance, picture profiles, all of these things that go into creating a great looking image with a camera like this. This isn't designed for that. This is just hit record, capture a memory, and I like that about it. I do miss stuff like this, because this came from this, and we don't do enough of that sort of thing now, just capturing home memories and creating things just because we can. So obviously this was a very unfair comparison between the Sony A7C that I'm using right now and the Flip Mino HD. They are designed for completely different things. As I mentioned before, I would never use this camera to make a video like I'm making right now. Even back in the day, there's always been other options to this to make videos like I'm making right now. But it was perfect for just popping in your pocket and taking on a family day out. I think what has replaced stuff like this, as well as phones, is compact cameras like the Sony ZV-1. I carry this around with me all the time whenever I want to make a little vlog or something, whereas back in the day, I'd have carried that around to capture memories. Now, this is filling the spot of that, and I would use that, the Sony ZV-1, over my phone as well, because I don't really like using phone cameras for much. Apart from just taking quick pictures for Instagram stories, I don't really use my phone camera much. I always prefer to use a proper camera, even if it is the Sony ZV-1, because I can still fit that in my pocket as well. I'd always choose that over that, and that has pretty much replaced that. Does that make sense? Yeah, loads of different cameras for loads of different reasons. So that's my old pocket camcorder thing, my first video camera, if you like, the Flip Mino HD, and maybe where my enjoyment for making videos first started, unless you go even further back to when my mum and dad used to follow me around as a kid with this thing, pointing that in my face. But yeah, who knows, that might be why I got into making videos. But yeah, I think that's it for this video. If you like what you see on the channel, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and hit subscribe, and I shall see you in the next one.